migrant a minute comes to Britain. In fact, it's actually more than that, but in simple terms, a migrant a minute comes. We have never...
How many migrants are you saying come to Britain?
Here's the thing. Half of those that have come aren't coming to work. They're coming as dependents.
Where did you get that?
Did Nigel Farage just expose the biggest political lie of our time? In a recent BBC interview, the former UKIP leader left viewers stunned with his bold claims about immigration and the economy. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. As the host struggled to maintain composure, Farage dropped bombshell after bombshell. But what he said next could change the course of British politics forever. Are you ready for the truth?
If I'd been given responsibility for making Brexit happen, it would have been very different.
But that's an easy get.
Actually, GDP per capita per person has fallen for the last 6.
Nigel Farage's bombshell claim that a migrant a minute enters the UK has sent shockwaves through the political landscape. But is this just another case of inflammatory rhetoric? Or is there truth behind these staggering numbers? Let's take a closer look at Labour's official stance on immigration and border control. Keir Starmer has been talking tough, promising to crack down on illegal immigration and implement stricter border controls. But when we compare Starmer's promises with the actual immigration figures, something doesn't quite add up.
And there's a trap here, you see. You're on benefits, you go back to work, you work more than 16 hours a week, the tax kicks in.
You could work, yeah? The children don't come over here and not work, do they?
This is making us poorer.
The real numbers paint a picture that's far from the rosy image Labour wants us to believe. While exact figures are hotly debated, one thing is clear. The UK is experiencing an unprecedented influx of migrants. And it's not just about the numbers. The question we should be asking is, where are these migrants coming from? And what impact are they having on our society? Farage's claims about the strain on public services are particularly alarming. Are our schools and hospitals truly at breaking point? The evidence suggests they might be. With NHS waiting times skyrocketing and school class sizes bursting at the seams, it's hard to deny that something's got to give. The current immigration levels, according to Farage, are simply unsustainable.
A migrant a minute comes to Britain. In fact, it's actually more than that, but in simple terms, a migrant a minute comes. We have never...
How many migrants are you saying come to Britain?
Here's the thing. Half of those that have come aren't coming to work. They're coming as dependents.
Where did you get that?
But here's where it gets really interesting. Farage dropped another bombshell that should make every British citizen sit up and take notice. He claims that over half of the new arrivals, a whopping 52%, are dependents rather than workers. If true, this raises serious questions about the economic contributions of these migrants. Think about it. If more than half of the people coming into our country aren't here to work, what does that mean for Britain's future? We're talking about a potential ticking time bomb for our welfare system, our housing market, and our already strained public services. Farage isn't pulling any punches when it comes to the economic impact. He argues that this influx is making the UK poorer, contributing to rising costs of living, particularly in housing and public services like the NHS. It's a stark contrast to the narrative we've been fed about immigration boosting our economy. But immigration is just one piece of the puzzle. The economic fallout from these policies could be far-reaching and long-lasting.
2.5 million have come to Britain over the course of the last 2 years. In fact, 1 in 30 people on the streets of Britain today has come in the last 2-year influx of unskilled labour, has driven down productivity, but intolerable pressure.
Productivity was an issue long time before.
As we grapple with the reality of these numbers, we have to ask ourselves, Are we prepared for the consequences of such rapid demographic change? And more importantly, why aren't our leaders being honest with us about the true scale of the challenge we're facing? Just when we thought Nigel Farage had dropped all his bombshells, he unleashed another that's left economists and politicians reeling. GDP per capita has fallen, Farage declared, his words cutting through the usual political spin. But wait a minute, wasn't immigration supposed to be the magic elixir for our economy? That's certainly what Labour's been telling us. Keir Starmer's been painting a rosy picture of immigration's economic benefits. He's promised us a land of milk and honey, where skilled migrants fill our labour shortages and drive innovation. But Farage's GDP bombshell has blown a hole in that narrative. Are we really all getting poorer while our population swells? The truth, as always, is more complex than either side lets on. Yes, GDP per capita has taken a hit, but is immigration the sole villain in this economic drama?
Coming in and hasn't accounted for the people who have left.
A migrant in a minute is net, but the gross figure is 2.5 million people.
1 in 30.
All I'm arguing is common sense. We're living through a population explosion. We can't cope. It's making us poorer.
Experts point to a perfect storm of factors: Brexit uncertainty, global economic headwinds, and yes, the strain of rapid population growth on our infrastructure and services. But let's not lose sight of the impact on everyday Brits. Farage argues that unchecked immigration is leading to wage stagnation and fierce competition for jobs. It's not just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about families struggling to make ends meet. And don't even get me started on the housing crisis. With rents skyrocketing by over 20%, Farage claims this population explosion is making life a misery for the average citizen. The economic consequences of this immigration boom are hotly debated. Some economists insist that in the long run, immigration boosts growth. But Farage and his supporters paint a bleaker picture of a nation where living standards are in free fall. Who's right? The jury's still out. But one thing's for sure. If the economy is shrinking on a per-person basis, our children might be the first generation in modern British history to be poorer than their parents. Farage's dire warnings don't stop there. He's predicting nothing short of a population explosion that could reshape Britain as we know it. More people competing for fewer resources, straining our already buckling public services to breaking point. It's a vision of the future that's hard to ignore, regardless of where you stand on immigration. With such alarming predictions, you'd think this would be plastered across every front page in the country. So why isn't it? The answer to that question might just make you question everything you thought you knew about British media and politics. As Farage's interview drew to a close, he delivered a parting shot that left the BBC host visibly uncomfortable. The mainstream media, including the BBC, are in denial about the true state of affairs, he declared. It's a damning indictment of the Fourth Estate, one that raises uncomfortable questions about the information we're fed daily. This leaves voters in a precarious position. How can they make informed decisions when the very institutions tasked with providing unbiased information are accused of burying their heads in the sand? The challenge for the British public is clear. They must become more discerning consumers of news, questioning not just what they're told, but also what's being left unsaid. As the UK approaches a critical crossroads, with local council elections on the horizon, Farage's warnings loom large. Will they be heeded as a much-needed wake-up call, or dismissed as fear-mongering by a political establishment desperate to maintain the status quo? The answer to this question could well determine the future of British politics and society for generations to come.